sure everybody's doing okay with their technology, and remind folks who are on the public folks who are listening that you can send in comments through the email address, the West Seattle Bridge at seattle.gov, if you have comments to make. So with that, I think I will turn it over to you, Mayor Nichols.
Thank you, Angie, and welcome to the group. We're glad to have you. We enjoyed Michael, and we currently wore him out, and he's left public service, but we will try to take that lesson and not drive you out of where you are. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. I'm very pleased to see how many folks are with us. I kind of thought that with a different time and day and no real emerging issues that we might not have as much participation, but this is a very committed group, so thank you. The agenda today is very full of reports and data information. There are a couple of places at the end of those presentations for Q&A, so we will have that opportunity. And then we're planning a half an hour or so later in the meeting for us to break into a couple groups to talk about particularly West Marginal Way and what happens there and what our thoughts are on how to the main thoroughfare, how that can work better before the bridge is back in operation. So with that, I'm going to end Zoom. We've all gotten our fill of Zoom, but we've got a hand raising function. So if you do have a clarifying question or during the Q&A, if you could use that, that will help us make sure everybody gets recognized and gets a chance to ask their question. With that, Paulina, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce a couple of folks.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Nichols. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being with us this afternoon. Excited to see you all and also thankful for your commitment. I'm also thankful that this afternoon we are having a meeting because usually in the mornings it has not worked for some folks. So we wanted to make sure that we are including those voices, and this is our first trial. So I'm happy that we are able to listen to those folks. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce our new facilitator. You already heard her voice, Angie Thompson, that is with Enviro Issues, and I will let her introduce herself in a little bit. And also, we're going to be hearing from Marielle from Bauer, I think I'm pronouncing right, who is a transportation advisor with the U.S. Representative Pramila Jayapal. So I'm going to let you introduce yourselves, but then also because we have such important role for Angie to get to know each other, and Michael had a great role in facilitating, but also help us go through pre-meetings and post-meetings. It's really important that she knows who we are. So I have asked that we do some introductions for the community task force. So I'll be calling your names very quickly so she gets to understand, as well for Marielle, who we are. So I'm going to model it. Paulina Lopez. I am the executive director for the Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition. I go by she, her, and I represent the Duwamish Valley, South Park, and Georgetown. So I'm going to give it to Angie.
Thank you. Angie Thompson, I go by she, her pronouns. As you said, Paulina, I work with Enviro Issues, the communications team that's supporting work on the West Seattle Bridge. I've also been facilitating the Maritime Town Hall, so I'm comfortable with some of what we're talking about here. My facilitation experience, I've done a lot of advisory groups and processes both in the city and in the Puget Sound overall. I've been around for a bit. On a personal note, I'm born and raised in Washington, and I am, there's a comment, I am a mom of 4 kids. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and then I have 11-year-old triplets, which was was a surprise 11 years ago, but I will tell you that 11-year-old triplets is so much easier than 1-year-old triplets. So I will take that any day. And they're quite excited about the snow, way more excited about the flurries of snow than they are about any part of stay-at-home school. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Angie. And so looks like we have here Marielle too.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Marielle Trumbauer. I use she, her pronouns, and I've worked for Congresswoman Jayapal for about 1.5 years now, but I have taken over the transportation portfolio from Yasmin, who left our office, and I'm excited to be joining the task force.
Well, we're very glad to have you here, Marielle, and our kudos to Representative Jayapal. We're always proud of her work. So we have Charlie Abel with us.
Hi, my name is Charlie Abel, go by he, him pronouns. I am a resident of West Seattle near the Junction and representing Juneau as well as the East Alaska Junction Neighborhood Coalition. Got involved through Sound Transit, advocacy, and just hoping to advocate for better transportation in West Seattle. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Austin.
This is Dan Austin, he, him pronouns. I am the board chair of the West Seattle Chamber of Commerce, West Seattle resident, also a restaurant owner and resident of the Morgan Junction over here.
Deb Barker.
And I am unmuted. Hi, I'm Deb Barker, she, her pronouns, and resident and president of Morgan Junction, also president of Morgan Junction Community Association. I'm on this task force organization with the West Seattle Transportation Coalition, who meets monthly, and we're all West Seattle, all transportation. I have also been on the Sound Transit 3 as a stakeholder advisory group, and I'm a retired land use planner. And want to welcome everybody new here. And Shannon, it's great to see you. Welcome.
Tommy Boward. Okay, maybe I'll go with David Bestock. Not yet. Ken Bowden.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Ken Bowden. I'm with Nucor Steel. We operate right over here in West Seattle. I'm also a member of the West Seattle board on there with Dan and various others. So thanks so much and appreciate being on.
Thank you. Do we have Shannon Baddock here?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Shannon Braddock. I'm Deputy Chief of Staff to Executive Dow Constantine and also a West Seattle resident. So very happy to be here and really impressed with the work that you all, frankly, have been doing. A lot more of the committees and the subcommittees have been doing some great work to get that community feedback, and we really appreciate that and happy to be a part of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Todd Carden.
Hello, I'm Todd Carden. I'm a local West Seattle resident here. I also own a restaurant, Elliott Bay Brewery and Pub. And I just appreciate the work that's going on here. And I look forward to every day going by because it's one day closer to getting a bridge back.
Marcy Carpenter.
Good afternoon. My name is Marcy Carpenter. I'm an Admiral neighborhood resident. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a former member of the Seattle Transit Advisory Board, have extensive transit planning background as in the citizen realm, and also am a blind person, so bring the disability perspective to the task force. Welcome to all the new people.
Thank you, Marcy. Eileen Cody and Thea Bird. No yet? Okay. Colleen Desmond.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Hey, everybody. It's nice to see your faces. My name is Colleen Desmond, and I am a representative of the Highland Park neighborhood. And I work at Neighbor Care Health, which we also have some clinics in West Seattle. And Heather Marks was the one who sweet talked me into this committee. So, but it's been a really great experience, and I look forward to continuing our work and someday meeting you all in person.
Thanks, Colleen. Joe Fitzbong and Noel Al-Shabrini.
I don't see Joe.
Okay. Katie Garrow. Peter Goldman.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Peter Goldman, he, him. I've lived in Alki area for 32 years. I've been a bike commuter to downtown for much of that time. I'm an environmental lawyer. I've worked on trail projects around the state and in the area here. I've worked in the area of bicycle advocacy, and I've had land use cases in Soto and the Terminal 5 area. I'm particularly interested in innovative transportation and view this as a great way to think into the future. So really enjoyed working on the task force and look forward to today's meeting.
Thank you, Peter. Your microphone is a little choppy, but we were able to.
Okay, thank you for telling me. Sorry, everybody.
Okay. Erin Goodman. Jolene Haas. Council member Lisa Herbal or Newell Aldrich.
Oh, hi, I'm Newell Aldrich here representing Councilmember Herbold. Today I staff transportation issues for her. Today she is chairing a meeting of the Wairanai and Duwamish Green Watershed Restoration and Enhancement Committee. Thank you.
I should have been in that meeting. Jill Mackey. Ting McConnell. Joe McDermott, council member, or Melissa Bailey.
Hi, this is Joe McDermott. He, him, King County Council member. I also serve on the Sound Transit Board and am a lifelong West Seattleite myself.
Thank you, council member. Marielle Trumbauer. We already heard from you. Thank you for being here. Sorry. Tommy Morales or Lakeisha Farmer. Joe Wynn, representative, senator.
Don't see Joe.
Okay, Alex Peterson, council member, or Toby Taylor. John Persack.
Thank you, Paulina. Hello there. My name is John Persack, and in this particular forum, representing the Georgetown neighborhood, although I bring to the table a lot of experience in land use and transportation issues. I serve on the Seattle Freight Advisory Board, as well as the Martin Luther King County Labor Council representing the maritime trades, and also work at the Port of Seattle driving equipment. So I'm spent a lot of time in Soto, Georgetown, Delridge, West Marginal, all those places. So thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, John. I love having you. Laura Radford.
Hi, everyone. My name's Laura Radford. I'm the executive director of the West Seattle Junction Association. I also live in West Seattle, and I'm also a member of the Low Bridge Committee as well. Thanks. Good to see everybody.
Thank you. Greg Ramirez. Not yet. Deputy Mayor Casey Sixkiller or Staff Kindle Shaw.
I know Casey said he wasn't going to be able to make this meeting.
Got it. Diane Sosny. I know council member.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Paula. I'm Diane Sosny. I'm a registered nurse and I'm a West Seattle resident, and president of SEIU Healthcare, 1199 Northwest, representing nurses, some physicians, service, professional, technical healthcare workers. And I also serve on the Lower Bridge task force, and Megan just sent out an email giving us some good news about additional spots that are going to open up, and glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, for all your service too. I know Council Member Peter Steinberg won't be able to make it, but Lindsay is here. Lindsay Wolpa.
Good afternoon, everybody. Lindsay Wolpa, she, her. I'm representing the Port of Seattle and the Northwest Seaport Alliance. Commissioner Steinberg sends his regrets. I'm also a West Seattle resident. I live in Peter Goldman's neighborhood, and also support the Lower Bridge Subcommittee. And some of those spots are due to some changes in Terminal 5, which I know we're going to talk about later today, and happy to answer questions when we get there. Thanks for having me here today.
Thank you, Lindsay. Jen Temple.
Hi, good afternoon. Jen Temple, she, her, and I represent West Seattle Bridge now and live in West Seattle. And the snow is sticking over here in Gatewood.
Ali Thompson.
Good afternoon. I'm Allie Thompson, she, her. I live in South Park, so I'm representing the South Park community as one of the host communities of the bridge closure. So advocating for all the kind of impacts that we're seeing down here in the Duwamish Valley, along with our Georgetown neighbors.
Thank you for your leadership, Ali. Bob Walters, that's great to have a W last name.
Oh, yeah, only Zimbabwe is worse, right? Bob Waters, Senior Vice President, SSA Marine. We're Marine Terminal Operators at T5, T18, T30, and headquartered on Harbor Island. So hardly impacted at all.
That's right. Thank you, Bob. And now our fearless leaders, Sam Zimbabwe and Heather Marks, please.
Hello, everybody. Sam Zimbabwe, Director at SDOT. Live pretty close to the junction.
Heather?
Sorry. Yeah, I just had to unmute myself. Heather Marks, I am the Program Director for the West Seattle Bridge Safety Program. I live in the snowy Fauntleroy neighborhood of West Seattle, and I'm always pleased to be here with you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for going through the introductions. I know it has taken some time, but it is important to remember who we are. And now that we have new members, to remind those of moving forward. So now we're going to go with Greg Iso, who's going to walk us through some bridge updates together with Heather. So Greg, do we have you ready to present?
Yes, I'm ready, Paulina. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Greg Izzo. I'm the program manager. I manage capital delivery for SDOT, and I'm overseeing the teams who will be delivering all of the projects that'll go through a public works contract here. So with that, I would like to go, is someone going to help me with the slides? I am not seeing the...
Yes, that's me, Greg, because I have just run into a technical challenge. Just a moment, please.
Okay, okay.
Greg, why don't you tell some jokes?
I got it.
I was just going to start off and just say we have a lot of we've had a lot of input. It's first of all, it's great to be here and see everyone from last year. We've gotten a lot of excellent input, and we continue to solicit input from everyone. We have a really strong team together, both our consultant team and our internal city team, as well as our partner agencies involved in this. So everybody's input has been important to get us to this point. So with that, I'm going to start off and provide some updates on the high and low bridge rehabilitation. As I mentioned earlier, maybe earlier in the year and last year, we are going to combine both the low bridge and the high bridge rehabilitations into one GCCM contract. So as you'll see the schedule, things are going to be aligned because both bridges are part of the same contract. We've completed the inspection of the low bridge, the center locking system, on the 23rd of January. And this was to inform the phase two, this next phase of design for us, the rehab the low bridge. And we didn't find anything substantial, which is good news, but we did find some things that we would incorporate, shimming, for example, into the low bridge contract. But like I said, it's nothing substantial that we were trying to avoid, so we can minimize, mitigate that risk and take it away. We reached preliminary design, which is really a 30% milestone. Similar, we're just using different terminology for this project. We reached that this week on Monday, we had that in, and we submitted to a full review to internal and external partners, and all of our agency partners should have received that on Tuesday. So that is out to review, and that's a really good news story. We're off the ground, and we have a lot of work to go, but this was a huge milestone for us. And this preliminary design, once vetted through the review here, will be the advertising set that we're shooting for in late February, early March. Again, we submitted the preliminary design to our partner agencies, and we're already getting comments back from folks. So we're going to be continuing to coordinate with all those impacted, as we usually do on our projects. And this one is unique. We understand that. So we're going to go the extra mile and above and beyond. We're developing the advertising contractor selection documents right now. And like I said, late February, early March is still our target. Very aggressive schedule, but we're going to stay aggressive. And that's because that's how we roll. We understand the pressure that's on us, and it's going to continue. So we're going to continue to put pressure on ourselves to meet the opening dates and get these rehabilitations completed. So late February, early March, GCCM, we're going to put that out in the streets. And the code of silence is going to go down next week. We're looking at the 19th to cut off all communications from proposed bidders so that we can have a fair and equitable contracting process. And we're also on track to, we're pursuing our key approvals from state and federal government. We had 2 meetings today, in fact, with WashDOT, and we're continuing to work closely with them to make sure that we're compliant, because we are going to federalize this contract, and we want to make sure that we're compliant in case we introduce other federal funds down the road, that we'll be fine to add those in and not have to take any steps back. So that's important to make sure that we're pursuing those approvals, particularly as we get the 30%, the RFQ and the specs, Division 1, very important before we advertise to get those approvals. This graphic shows kind of what we're looking at as far as the work, and I think we've gone through this before. We're looking at the post-tensioning system. We're also looking at the carbon fiber wrapping, very similar to phase 1 stabilization, but much global, much larger in scope. And now it's going to extend between piers 15 and 18. So it's not really shown on the end spans there, but between 15 and 16 and 17 and 18, we'll also have the CFRP and the post-tensioning system. Next slide, please. Okay. Right now, we're continuing to monitor the bridge. Obviously, this has been going on for quite a while, since last year, early last year. The bridge, right now we're showing that the bridge is responding to the actual measurements are correlating very well to our analytical models. That's a very good sign, because it matches our assumptions for the upcoming phase 2 design. So our assumptions are the same, which means our assumptions for the design and the basis of that design remains the same. So that is very good news in how the bridge is responding. The thermal cycle is not finished. We'll get through April here, but we'll continue to monitor. And if anybody stuck their foot outside, it's a little colder today, so we're going to put it to the test, but everything's looking good so far. Also, as we had mentioned earlier, and some may already know, the cracking has significantly been reduced after the phase 1 stabilization work has been completed. So again, everything's looking good there. As we continue to get warmer, we're going to continue to see the settlement of cracks, and we always could expect some cracking to occur with the thermal changes. That's always expected. As long as it's within tolerance, we're going to be fine, but we expect that. And it's always the delta when you go from a low temperature to a high temperature in a very short amount of time. That obviously impacts the structure a lot differently, but we're going to be going through that this year. And some of this monitoring will inform the phase 2 design. So there's still some adjustments if needed that we can make the phase 2, but we're not anticipating. Based on the models and what we're actually measuring out there, things are looking very good. And so with that, we're also going to augment the existing monitoring system and expand that so it's more global. Right now, it's more localized to the midspan of the high bridge. So we're going to expand that and make it more global so that it reaches between Piers 15 to 18, because we want to monitor the whole system of the bridge, especially as we get these next rehabilitations completed on the high bridge. Next slide, please. This will show where we are in schedule. Like I said earlier, you'll notice the low bridge and the high bridge schedules align because they're part of the same contract. We're roughly at our 30% design. It's just been distributed for review. And then we're going to go RFQ, advertise late February, March, get a contractor on by May. That's our target. And we're going to work through, we're going to have our contractor work with us as part of our team so that we can progress that to 60% and then final. And then we're looking at toward August as a final design and then negotiating with the contractor a final price and then putting out the subcontractor packages and starting construction roughly in October, November of this year for both bridges. Next slide, please. The low bridge. So quick update on the low bridge projects. We have a lot going on our low bridge, and this identifies a few projects. The controls project is going out very soon, within the next month or two. And so this is one to get out very soon because there's a lot of testing and procurement to be done with this contract. So the earlier we can get out, the better, the quicker we can get that testing and procurement done, because this is also a project that needs to be completed in 2021, and that's still per the schedule. And we're preparing to advertise this quarter, like I said. The cylinder lift project is also a body of work that is going to be going through a couple phases this year. One is by this first quarter, second quarter, we're going to be doing some repairs to the cylinder. And so that work will be happening early on. And then later this year, we're going to be looking at replacing the cylinder. So that's the one we're going to be planning, and that will need more coordination, as there are expected to be some closures of the bridge to do that work. One of the things we're doing is we're improving how we take out and install the cylinders. We're designing and developing a lift system that will help all future replacement and maintenance of those cylinders. So it'll cut down the time from roughly what it used to take 5 to 6 days might take 2 to 3 now if we have this lift system in place. So that's also a good sign. So we're doing everything we can to minimize the impacts later in the year of that replacement cylinder by coming up with this revised lift system. Next slide, please. Okay. This also shows some of the other projects on the low bridge. We have the communications system that's currently on the high bridge. That system will be relocated. We want to get it off the high bridge because it's vulnerable and at risk. So this will be the time to do it. And we want to do this now in 2021 before our contractor gets out there. So that'll be directionally drilled. And then the permitting and design for that is going to take a little time. So we expect to get that out to advertise in June of this year. And we don't expect a very long duration of construction. So fourth quarter is when we'll be in construction and completed as well. And the same for the lift cylinder project is we expect to be completed with that in fourth quarter as well as the lifting frame. As you can see, that takes a little time to put together. And the low bridge controls project, again, as I mentioned earlier, the testing and procurement takes time. And so we want to get that out to advertise now so we have time to build that in and also complete that in 2021. All the low bridge projects that you're seeing here, our target is 2021 to get them completed because we don't want contractors stepping on each other's toes either. So it's important to get this work completed in advance of the rehabs.
Greg, we had a question in the chat.
Okay.
Bob was wondering if we could get some details on closures for the low-level bridge during its construction.
Closures today we don't have. I will, for the low bridge rehabilitation project, I will say that we figured that we are very likely not going to be any full-time closures for the Low Bridge as it relates to the rehabilitation contract, the GCCM. So we're likely going to avoid some full-time closures on that, and that's very good. We're finding ways to work around that. So there might be some lane closures, but no full closures are anticipated. For the other projects, we are still working out what the closures would be, particularly the cylinder replacement. Like I said, we're expecting that to be cut down from what originally traditionally would take 5-6 days. With the new lift system, we're expecting that to be cut down to maybe 2 to 3. So that's about as much information as I can provide today. However, this is a conversation that will continue with those impacted, and as we receive comments and concerns about what the impacts are, I think a lot of that dialogue will be taken care of through that. But unfortunately, I don't have a lot more detail on what the exact impacts will be on the Low Bridge as it relates to, as we get further into design, we're going to know a lot more, especially the projects that aren't going to have a contractor on board early. We might have to wait until we get the contractor on board so we can really fully understand what the impacts are. We could take some guesses right now, but it's a little early. Hopefully that provides enough information for today, but I know there'll be more. We'll be working with everyone.
Yeah, Greg, Bob said thank you. Another question for you, and we're running a little tight on time to maybe do a quick answer here. Deb Barker asked, with the understandable dual focus of High Bridge and Low Bridge, one that will have a higher priority over the other? It's not a fair question.
Yes, it's a very good question, and I have to be careful here. So no, it's a very good question. So they're both a priority. Is that safe? They're both a priority. We are discussing some strategies of relieving perhaps the Low Bridge stress. If we do find an opportunity to quickly get the High Bridge repaired first, it could relieve some stress off the Low Bridge as it relates to traffic congestion. So we are looking at our options. What is most efficient? As far as timing, we have a little more time to get the Low Bridge completed. We have toward the end of the year. It's good to have that in mind. However, we also want to be sensitive to what the impacts are. Right now, we're looking at the High Bridge of possibly getting that open first, and then it would provide some relief for the Low Bridge so we can continue to rehabilitate that bridge as well. So that's kind of what we're thinking right now, but we're trying to find the best approach, but that's what we're thinking now.
So Greg, let me ask a clarifying question. We're at 30% design. And that's a milestone. At that point, you're able to pinpoint budget and schedule much more accurately than in earlier design phases. So next month we meet on March 10th. What level of information will you be able to share with us then in terms of budget, schedule, and scope?
It's a good question, Mayor Nichols. Our 30% is usually our baseline where we measure ourselves on scope, schedule, and budget. And what I mean by that is we really measure ourselves on the project managers and staying within the scope, schedule, and budget. So we're there. We're much more confident in our numbers now than we were obviously during the CBA process last year. I will say after we get through this 30% review cycle, which comments are due later this month, we're going to know a lot more and be able to refine the budget and the schedule even more, just based on some feedback that we're getting from partner agencies and internally. So we're continuing to refine. I mean, design phase is what it's meant to be. As we move along towards 60, we're going to get even closer and more refined with our numbers. But this review process will inform our scope, schedule, and budget, and we'll be able to tighten that a lot more up by March.
So on March 10th, I would just request that we have a report that goes into some detail so that we understand what the critical path is. We can then anticipate as you're moving through construction, whether we seem to be on schedule or if there's some slippage, whether we're running into any. So next month, let's have a focused conversation on that.
Okay, very well. We'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Greg. I think if we move to the next slide, I'll take over from here. And thank you for that clarifying question, Mayor Nichols. I do appreciate it. So just a couple of notes for you here on the Low Bridge. I wanted to let you know that automated enforcement has now been underway for 3 weeks since January 11th, and we're observing lower traffic volumes on the Low Bridge, which is exactly what we hoped to get from automated enforcement. When we put this slide together, we had seen a 25% decrease in daily traffic volumes. And now with the latest numbers, we've seen a 36% decrease. And so that's really excellent news. In addition, in response to the number of warnings and citations that have been issued, we're adding some additional variable message signs to the Low Bridge approaches, just in case people haven't gotten the message. We don't want people to get cited unnecessarily. So we plan to take a look at the use of the bridge monthly and make adjustments as we can. With the announcement, though, by the Northwest Seaport Alliance last week that they're going to deliver Terminal 5 at the end of the fourth quarter, beginning of the first quarter 2022, we are revisiting our planned approach to Low Bridge access. And I think Diane Sosny gave us a little peek into what's happening, because we have been reserving some capacity for when those terminals open. Can we go to the next slide, please? This very beautiful graphic shows the actual volumes on the Lower Spokane Swing Bridge in blue and green for people who are currently using the Low Bridge. The most important takeaway is that we're seeing a pretty even distribution of where folks are taking their trips across the day. What's different, though, is in gray, we have a projection for how many trucks and other T5 related traffic is going to be expected in, I think it's January, when they open T5. So one of the things that we've been doing is sort of reserving that space on the bridge, because we didn't want to give people, whiplash by giving additional access and then taking it away. But since now it's going to be months to reserve that access, we are talking with the Low Bridge subcommittee about how to move forward with releasing some of that access, with the understanding that we're going to have to take it back when T5 opens. So why don't we move to the next slide and we can see the eastbound direction. So this shows the same distribution, but it shows the traffic on the eastbound direction. So we have heretofore been allowing 450 daily authorized plate trips, but we think we can more than double that. And so we need to do a little bit more work, because we really don't want to create a situation where we're in our eagerness to open up access, that we're creating a traffic situation that impedes emergency vehicles. So our first steps will be around some business access and on-call healthcare provider access. And also, I'm looking directly at you, Councilmember McDermott, access for those who are seeking life-saving medical treatment. We have some work to do to gather what those numbers look like, so we understand how we can offer that. We're going to continue to work alongside our Low Bridge Access Subcommittee, and we are going to make these changes, even if only until Terminal 5 opens, because we understand how valuable it is to our partners and into the community to make the best use of that corridor. So I want to just say, I know I've said this 3 times, but I want to say it again. Whatever access we allow at this point we're going to have to pull back as soon as Terminal 5 opens in December or January. So we're going to be able to open things up, but we're going to need to close it back down again. So I just want to be perfectly clear and on the record about how that's going to go down. If we can go to the next slide, please. We discussed the on-call healthcare providers last month. We're happy to let you know that on-call healthcare providers know that if they use the low bridge when they're responding to a call and they receive a citation, then they can use what's called a declaration of non-responsibility to get that ticket waived. So if you are an on-call healthcare provider and wish to use the bridge to respond to those calls, please let us know and we'll make sure that you have all the details you need. It just involves a letter from your employer certifying that you were on call and that's what you were using the low bridge for. We know it's a difficult process to go through for our healthcare workers, and we're working on a better solution where we can identify all those folks that are going to be on call and get them into the license plate system so they don't have to go through that two-step process. We are hosting a Q&A meeting or Q&A meetings with healthcare institutions coming up. Coming up on Friday, and we also had one on the 9th. So if we move on to the next slide, we can take some questions.
And as we get started, I wanted to remind folks about raising their hand and to let you know that if you look at the bottom of your screen, you may have a little hand image, but if you don't have the latest version of Zoom, you may not see it. So if you don't see it, then just go ahead and type, question in the chat and we'll take that as a virtual hand raise. Deb, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. I've been having conversations with a member of the community who is very upset about the information that he's been given to deal with his commute from West Seattle to Harbor Island. And I'm trying to connect him up with members of the committee or committee lead, and I've given him information about who to contact. I just need to ask, is the subcommittee accepting commentary from the general public?
Of course, we are happy to hear, SDOT's always happy to hear from the public. We are well aware that there are people who live in West Seattle and work on Harbor Island who would like not to drive all the way around, completely understand. We're right now focusing our attention on healthcare providers and people who are seeking life-saving medical treatment. We have a sort of prioritized list of groups of people. I can tell you that people who live in West Seattle and work on Harbor Island are on that list, but they aren't next. We really need to attend to people who are in the healthcare field and who are seeking treatment before we get to that additional level. So thank you.
So just to clarify then, if I wanted this person to connect with the committee, they would go through you, Heather? Or
oh God, no. They should write to the project. I mean, they're welcome to. Anyone is welcome to email me at any given moment. That's okay, but please send questions like that to the project email inbox, which
I'd like the committee. Heather, you froze.
Heather appears to be frozen. Oh.
Okay. So
Heather,
Heather,
everybody, it's Megan. While Heather is frozen, for our tracking purposes, Deb, it is really actually great if it does come in through West Seattle Bridge at seattle.gov, because then we are able to capture all of the requests in a really systematic way. So we would love that.
Yes, you've done that before, and I'm just trying to help you get to the next step. So
I am happy to have you give this person my email address.
Thank you so much, Megan. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Deb.
We're a little behind schedule, and so maybe we'll take one more question and then move to the next section. Laura, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I do. So this is Laura, the Executive Director of the West Seattle Junction. And I just want to thank SDOT for allowing the Junction to be part of the Small Business Pilot Program. I'm also part of the Low Bridge Task Force Committee. And I have to just say the conversations that we have been incredibly thoughtful, and everyone has really dug in and given an amazing amount of information and also thoughtfulness as we move through these conversations. So I just want to say, like, as we continue this pilot program for small business, I'm really looking forward to expanding that to other small businesses on the peninsula. And I just appreciate what we've accomplished these last couple of months.
Thank you so much, Laura, and thank you so much for your participation. It's always a pleasure to have you on a committee. We are going to be working with our friends at OED and to identify people with a business license who are in those sort of retail, restaurant, and maritime industries here in the West Seattle zip codes, to identify additional people who might not be participating in the pilot program through the Junction BIA or through the West Seattle Chamber, so we can make sure we're broadening that in an equitable way. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Sarah, Zora, I think we're going to move on to Reconnect West Seattle. Are you
awesome.
ready? Yeah, great.
I agree. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Zor from SDOT, the Reconnect West Seattle Mobility Manager. And I'm going to give you a few updates today, and then we will be getting into a larger presentation about West Marginal Way project as well. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is Homezone update. Our Homezone team, consisting of David Burgesser, Shauna Walgren, and our really good partners at the Department of Neighborhoods, Christian Alcade and Danielle Friedman, have been really doing a good job. And I wanted to make sure that we are highlighting the work that's been going on with a lot of community conversations. Just to remind everyone what a Homezone is. It's a really holistic, kind of cost-effective approach to make residential streets more walkable within community, and really to slow down traffic in the neighborhood while maintaining local access. So we really are focused on 3 different neighborhoods that are very heavily impacted by our detour route traffic. And so we're focused right now on Georgetown, South Park, and Highland Park. We're a little more ahead of in the Georgetown and South Park neighborhoods at this time, and Highland Park's running maybe about a month behind in terms of where we are with our draft home zone plan. So I'm going to be showing you today the final plans for Georgetown and South Park, and then next month or the month after we'll be coming back to show you more and talk about the Highland Park home zone plan. So if you go to the next slide, I'll start with Georgetown. So we have had a lot of community engagement happening. We finalized our surveys, we had them translated, and so we are really now at the point where we're in the design phase of a lot of these projects that you see in the map right here. So just some highlights for you. We will be installing kind of a neighborhood greenway and Stay Healthy Street loop, which really consists of Stay Healthy Streets, remember, is where we have some street closures that allow that local access, but also some all-way stops at some of these intersections. In a neighborhood greenway, we really have a lot of speed humps to try to control high speeds from motorists, and stop signs as well, and additional wayfinding and things like that. So there's going to be a Georgetown loop on some of the streets in the neighborhood on the south side of the Georgetown area. We will also be doing a lot of more radar feedback signs. We've done some speed studies out there in Georgetown, and so on Ellis and Corson, we're going to be installing more radar feedback signs because we have noticed that some higher speeds in the area. You'll see on the map there are some brown kind of slash lines, and those are all going to be new speed humps to really help control some of the cut-through traffic after our data analysis and collecting data on some of these streets of the neighborhood to really have a good assessment of the volumes of cars and then the speeds of those vehicles, and really try to maintain some better mobility and neighborhood feel instead of having cut through traffic kind of screaming through some of the streets. We are also very focused on some pedestrian crossing improvements as well in Georgetown. And you'll see a line kind of cutting through the center, accessing Michigan, where we do have a 6th Avenue South walkway coming in, where a lot of people that we heard in the north kind of end of Georgetown really do try to utilize 6th Avenue South to get to the other portion of Georgetown. And right now it's not a very friendly, walkable environment at all. So we will be doing a lot of improvements. You'll see some of these improvements coming probably Q2, maybe some speed humps in Q1 of this year. So we're going to be really implementing some priority projects as early as we can and continue to do some design and evaluation of potential future projects coming up for the Georgetown and South Park neighborhoods. If you go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about South Park. As you can see from this map, we've kind of split the neighborhood into 2 different home zone areas. One is the Concord, which is the more southwest, and then the northeast home zone plan. Part of what we heard a lot from the South Park neighborhood is the fact of how do we mitigate the impact of all the emissions from the cars as they have more traffic coming through the neighborhood. So street trees was really, really important for the South Park neighborhood to try to make sure we're mitigating from an environmental aspect as well. I will let you know that Shauna just told me today that SDOT will be installing 40 trees in South Park March 11th and 12th of, I was going to say this month, but I guess it is February, so March is next month. And so that is going to be really cool for the neighborhood. We're also going to be working with the Duwamish Valley Youth Corps to help us with the outreach materials for those tree plantings. And so that will be translated into Spanish as well. So we're really excited just about the community connection we're making to make sure that the community is involved in helping do some of the engagement and explaining to the community why these trees are going to be pretty important for the environmental side of the mitigation from that detour traffic coming through the neighborhood. In other regards, especially if you look at the northeast side of the map, you'll see a lot of different speed humps. You know, we did some good analysis and traffic studies, and there are a lot of cut through traffic happening to try to get bypass the detour routes and some of the congestion we have there. So we will be doing installing a bunch of different speed humps, especially on Dallas Ave, where we do have some speeds and flow there. You can see that we will be installing also crosswalk upgrades. On Cloverdale, we will be installing rectangular rapid flashing beacons to really help pedestrians maneuver across that detour route of Cloverdale. And so when we actually did the surveys from these 2 neighborhoods, Georgetown and South Park, one of the questions we asked was, are we hearing, do we have it right? And, you know, half the people said, no, you do not. And we were like, okay, like we want to hear from you guys. What did we get wrong or what can we add? So from the comments that we heard for Georgetown and South Park, we kind of split it into 3 different groups. One group that would be very high cost or not within our time frame for how a project would be able to get implemented. One is to bring some project ideas to be potentially implemented in 2022, which I'll talk about here in a couple minutes. And then and the other category of projects are things that we were able to include with the Homezone plan. So we really appreciate people taking the time to do the surveys, really looking at the draft plans and then making them better. So we really are pretty happy with where we are in our engagement and the community with our 2 home zones at this time. If you go to the next slide.
Hey, Sarah, before you go too far, I just want to keep everybody up to speed on what's happening in the chat. There's some
I'm sorry.
Compliments for you. John Persak said that they saw the presentation for the final home zone plan for Georgetown a couple weeks ago, and the communication on this has been fantastic, and looking forward to the next steps and follow up. And Paulina totally agree. Same with South Park. Deb said, I want to compliment SDOT for the new map graphics on the home zone presentations, that those are really successful. And then Deb also said she heard positive feedback from the Highland Park neighborhood about their home zone experience. So, so that's all great. Paulina did make a comment about asking for mature street trees.
Yeah.
And then she noted that community members are always the experts and that they have the wisdom. So
yep, we will be installing what Shauna tells me is 40 trees that will be impressive, and then the scarlet oak is a big tree. So I think you'll get some good different sizes of trees up in South Park. I did want to mention for Highland Park, we do have their home zone survey open until February 15th. So we really want to make sure those surveys are translated into English, not translated into English, but Korean, Vietnamese, and Spanish as well. And so there's a big blast. We already have had 342 comments, which is pretty awesome. You know, South Park was about almost 200 and Georgetown a little bit under them. So Highland Park people, you still have a good couple more days to make these plans better than what you have seen as our draft. So we're really encouraged by all the different engagement that we've been going on and really making sure we're listening to communities. Our community plans, you know, we really want to make sure we're mitigating the impacts that the community is feeling with that high bridge closure. If you go to the next slide, please. Now I'm going to switch a little bit to what's happening kind of in the Reconnect West Seattle implementation plan process. So as you know, we completed our 2020 project list. We're in the middle of developing or in the design phase now for 2021 projects, which includes the home zones and about 30 other projects that we have that will be implemented in 2021. Right now, we are also making the call for 2022 projects. And you may wonder, Sarah, you haven't implemented all your 2021 projects yet. Why are you asking us for 2022 projects? Well, you know, the bridge is going to be open in 2022, and we want to make sure that we're going to try to shift our cycle of project development, design, and delivery early into 2021 so that we can try to get things built before that bridge is open to really help the neighborhoods feel the mitigation from that impact. So if you go to the next slide, we're asking for neighbors, communities to really submit project proposals, or if you are feeling an impact and you don't know what the solution would be, you just write us in about what the impact is, and then we have a vetting process where SDOT will go and really get a sense of what that issue is and if there are solutions that we can find to mitigate that project. So we do have a community project request list that we've been tracking since the bridge has been closed. And so we already have ideas that did not make it into the 2020 or 2021 implementation plan projects, but we would definitely like to hear more from the community. We're going to leave the project proposal window open until the end of this quarter. We really do hope, if you go to the next slide, I think it might tell us. Nope. We really do hope that we finish the gathering of ideas in Q1 2021, and then in Q2 of 2021, we'll go through a prioritization process. So I'm kind of anticipating that in April of the meeting for the community task force, we'll talk more about what projects are in prioritization and more details about that. I just kind of wanted to give you a snapshot of what the prioritization methodology looks like. And this is totally married from the neighborhood street fund process. They just went through an update of their prioritization process with community. And so we really wanted to focus on how the community was involved in that. And it's really about looking for project feasibility at first to really think about cost estimates, time frame of when a project could be built. The next step is how we would actually prioritize on a 100-point scale, really focused on, are we helping to mitigate some of the impacts that we see? Will it help maybe shift people's modes, as that's one of the big things we need to do as we come into COVID recovery time? How do we get people to try and take other modes of transportation to really make sure that we can have some similar levels of traffic in the area? Equity is going to be a huge thing for us. Depending on where the project would be specifically located, if you're going to be in some of our higher impact neighborhoods, we really will give more score to those neighborhoods to make sure we're delivering the correct kind of projects. Safety is a huge goal for SDOT and Vision Zero. We always want things to be as safe as possible. So do any project ideas help bring a safety to the next level? And then delivery method. As you may know, and I will tell you right now, a majority, almost all of our projects will be crew delivered, except for our interim signal at the Duwamish Longhouse is going to be kind of a capital project. And then from after we get the project ideas and then we go through some of the prioritization, then we have a prioritization for implementation. It's not a ranking. So we'll explain that a little bit more in the next couple months as we get those project ideas from you all, and then we vet them internally, see if they're feasible, and then we'll come back and try to tell more about that prioritization process and where some of the projects are falling out. If you go to the next slide. I did mention this last time as well, that we do have our travel options webpage open. So it gives you ideas of different ways you can get around, some good information about that. We will be starting more of a campaign to make sure people are thinking about different ways they can move around the Duwamish Valley, across the Duwamish Riverway and in West Seattle, especially as we are coming into that COVID recovery time. It's going to be really crucial that everyone does their part about how they're getting around, if they're willing and able to take a different mode maybe than they're typically used to. So you'll see more conversation and discussion and campaign kind of outreach happening as we move into 2021 further. And the next slide is going to be a quick pitch again for the current Metro Vanpool promotion. The promotion goes until the end of this quarter, March 31st. So if you have any need to travel across the Duwamish River Valley, Vanpools do get, they are on the priority list for the low bridge access. So it's a really good thing to think about if you are needing to travel across there for your employment. And with that, I am going to be just sharing the Reconnect West Seattle schedule. It kind of flows with some of the conversation we had for 2021 projects. We're really hoping that all the projects that were in the implementation plan will get built in 2021. And again, you'll see the green line for 2022 projects where we do want to be in project development and design in 2021 for earlier delivery in 2022. Some other things, traffic mitigation, we always are kind of looking at efficiencies on these detour routes. And like I said before, we've done pavement assessments so we can make sure things are in good repair, and constant kind of data monitoring and collection as well. If you go to the next slide, I think that I will pause for questions.
Marcy has her hand up. Marcy?
Okay.
Thanks, Sarah. So I have a couple questions. One is back on slide 20, the South Park home zone. For the 14th in Dallas, the signal you're investigating, would that be a full traffic light, or would that be a kind of thing where I push a button and lights flash and I hope the cars slow down?
Yeah, Marcy, that is a really good question. We're still in evaluation of that, I will say, but we would not be putting a rectangular rapid flashing beacon at that location because there's it's a very big intersection. So that if we are able to put a signal there, we would consider that a full signal. It's a lot of different agency work, because King County has land in the bridge. So our project developers are in the midst of that evaluation right now. So hopefully in the next month, I could come back, next month and share where we are more with those details, but it would be a full signal if we're able to do that.
Okay. And just to put in the reminder for everyone, whenever you're considering a signal, also you want to be sure to put in audible pedestrian signals.
Definitely.
Thank you. And then back to I forgot to ask this before about the Longhouse signal. Is that also anticipated to be a full traffic signal?
Yep. Yes. And we'll get to that definitely in the next presentation as well. But yes, that would be a full signal. And that is anticipated to be built in 2021 as well.
Okay. And remember the APS.
Yep. APS.
Thanks.
Colleen, you had a question?
Yeah. Hi. Hey, Sarah. How's it
Hi,
going?
Colleen. Good, thank
Hey.
you.
Good. So I have it's a totally random question, but maybe not so random. So on slide 27, like, thanks, Megan. So you have the project timelines, a schedule. So my question for you is, I know that I am learning a ton, and I know from previous conversations that a lot of construction with SDOT can't happen in the winter months.
Exactly.
So how much of that construction happens in, like, I'm looking at particularly quarter 4, 2021 and quarter 1, 2022. So, I mean, is the goal to kind of have most of that construction done before the winter hits?
Definitely. So that is exactly how we set it up. Anytime that we deliver a project, we actually like to know what that project is the year before so that we can do the design and development, and then it gets on our crew delivered list, right? And a lot of times, you know, the West Seattle Bridge is a prioritized project for SDOT right now for crew delivery. So if we have, you know, like our speed humps, let's just give you an example, a speed hump design done for South Park, we'll have that work order ready for our crews, and it's just a matter of weather. So Trevor Partap is here too today, and he's our crew liaison. So he and our other partner, Laith Al-Rashid, who is our design manager for crew delivered projects, work very well together and constantly to say, okay, what work order is coming up and where can we get it squeezed into the crews if they already have things on their list, you know? So we are going to try to take advantage of trying to get the designs done as early as possible and then see where we can fit it in with some of the weather. But it is very challenging to build in our winter months here in Seattle and the rainy months, to be quite honest, because if we have any striping or pavement markings, then we obviously can't do that in the wet weather. So there are some fine periods of time that we do construct. And with Reconnect West Seattle, we're trying to squeeze in any projects that we can build in our weather gaps, as well as very focused on our springtime, summertime. That is like the crucial crew delivery phase, I'd say.
Okay, thanks so much, Sarah.
All right.
Sarah, Diane had a question. Diane, maybe you want to jump in and ask that question? If you don't mind.
Sure. I was just curious how much it would cost to do an overpass for pedestrians at that crossing on
Dallas 14th there?
Yeah, instead of a light, which then slows traffic, and you know, this way it wouldn't interfere.
Well, that's really thoughtful question, Diane. We do have underneath the South Park Bridge, there is a trail that people can use to get underneath for if you're if you're a pedestrian or bicyclist. We have heard that you know, if there's not the lighting down there, it might feel not too safe. So that's something we can look at. A pedestrian crossing would be very expensive and pretty timely to construct, so it would not be something that we would consider doing within the Reconnect West Seattle timeframe, I'd say. I don't know like a dollar amount to give you, but too much for this, I'd say.
Sarah, I think we have to keep moving along.
Sounds good.
We're continuing with you and Brad, so you just keep going.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to now talk about West Marginal Way. So Brad Topol is here with me, and he is the PM of this project. We are going to give you a pretty meaty presentation and then have a breakout session at the end so we can really discuss some of the questions we have for you guys, some of the thoughts you have about what you're going to see. So I'm going to just kind of open it up, and then Brad's going to try to kind of go pretty quickly because we want to give you guys a pretty good amount of time to be able to discuss what you're going to be hearing from us right now. So if you go to the next slide, this, remember, was a project that we were originally going to try to build in 2020. And then we said, oh, timeout, like we have a lot of different engagement to do to make sure that we're going to be building the right thing. The biggest goal for us is to really make West Marginal Way safer and more accessible and predictable for all users of that roadway. We definitely understand that it's a major truck street. It heavy haul route. It does a lot of different jobs in terms of trying to move some of the big freight, especially in conjunction with T5 upcoming and all the other maritime businesses in this area. It also represents a pretty decent bicycle network gap between West Seattle, Georgetown, and South Park. It's the gap between the Duwamish River Trail to the West Seattle Bridge Trail over the Low Bridge. And it is the home to the Duwamish Longhouse and Cultural Center, which is a pretty important part of the project itself. So if you go to the next slide, the thing that is a confirmed project is the construction of the interim signal and the paint and the crosswalk at the Duwamish Longhouse. And that signal will be at the Herrings Park entrance, just so you have a sense of Herrings Hills Park entrance, I'm sorry, just so you have a sense of where, if you can visually see that in your mind. We will be also installing that west side sidewalk connection from the trail signal to the crossing signal. So right now it's kind of like a, what do you say, a goat path, and not like a standard kind of sidewalk. So we really want to increase the accessibility for people to access the Duwamish Longhouse Cultural Center. The next, if you go to the next slide, Brad's going to start here. I just wanted to make it very clear that this is the potential project that we're talking about on West Marginal Way. This is where we really want to have a lot of input from you guys about what you see. So Brad's going to talk about these two different sections, probably very, very quick, because we have a lot of data that we wanted to go through as well. But just remember that we're really talking about 0.6 of a mile of the whole stretch of West Marginal Way, like 2.5 miles long, from Southwest Marginal Place to the Duwamish Longhouse, basically. So Brad, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you may have to fly through, but we will have breakout session in case there's other questions. And then Brad and I are going to be in both separate breakouts so that we'll be able to communicate better. So Brad, please take it away.
Great. Can everyone hear?
Megan will cue you by advancing your slides faster.
Perfect, Megan.
I assume everyone can hear me? Great. Cool. So we are looking primarily in the southbound direction on West Marginal Way. We've broken it into two sections, and that's just because the types of treatments we're going to look at in those two sections are a little bit different. So a lot of the data we'll present is focused primarily on that southbound direction, because at this time we're not planning for, we're just looking at that southbound area. Next slide, please. So we have two options for the north end of the section 1 of this West Marginal Way. We are considering a no build option as well as a build option for the protected bike lane. You know, we have these two because we are still very much soliciting feedback, and we want to hear from everybody, and we're continuing to hear from the the community and the freight boards and the port and all of our other partners out there. But in this area, this is the gap between the trail and the West Marginal, or the West Seattle Bridge Trail, and so this is the area we're looking to fill. Next slide, please. Within that area, we looked at 4 different alternatives for where a protected bike lane or a bike facility could fit. We ended up landing on B as the preferred. This is because D, which is kind of in some of the original planning from like the last few decades, kind of made some assumptions that the rail line would go away. It is still very much active. BNSF owns it, and it's still being utilized for several of the freight businesses further south in the corridor. Section C would have taken that curb lane on the northbound direction. But when you get to the very north end of this project corridor, it's very narrow. We have very constrained right of way, and there's just no place for people who are bicycling to turn, as well as just, it's just very limiting, as well as we know that vehicles back up from the Chelan 5-way. And option A, we've also looked at how do we, if we could widen that space. Right now it's a narrow sidewalk. It's below our bare minimum standards that we would ever consider for a multi-use trail, or even our most minimum protected bike lane facility. To make that close to anything standard, we'd have to remove every single tree along this corridor and then pave that area. And even then we would still be kind of below our minimum thresholds, or we'd be right at our minimum thresholds for this type of work. So B, in terms of space, seemed to pop as the preferred option. Next slide, please. Here's an example of what it looks like. Why do we like this option? It provides comfortable space, more adequate space for people who are bicycling in this corridor, and improves some of the sight lines at the driveways. There are some in that sidewalk trail today, there are some blind corners where the corner of the building comes directly up to the edge of the driveway. And so it's essentially blind between driveways and people who would be biking in that area. But this design still allows us to maintain 11-foot travel lanes, which would be needed for freight along this corridor. Next slide, please. Looking to the south, we kind of have the section 2. This is the area in front of the Longhouse. So we have a few different options out here. Next slide, please. There are a few things we can consider. Again, we're kind of continuing to look at the area down south because we already have an existing lane drop in front of the Longhouse, and as well as we are focusing a lot on safety around the Longhouse. So we have a few options. We could extend the proposed trail south to the Longhouse crossing signal. There is existing parking in front of the Longhouse that we could extend to the north, or option 3, which has been the preference of the port and the freight port, is to remove the existing lane drop and open it up to two southbound travel lanes. Next slide, please. Keep going. Jump into the data. Hey, we know volumes jumped here. Everybody knows this, but we want to illustrate it here. This is showing, this snapshot showing some of our data from January. We know that over the summer last year, we hit some basically historically high peaks for West Marginal Way. Throughout its history, it's pretty much sit at around 10 to 12,000 vehicles a day. Now we're hitting things that are closer to 23 or even up to 26 or 27,000 vehicles a day over the summer. But in perspective of all the other corridors we're monitoring, it's right in the middle. Before the West Seattle Bridge closure, it was essentially, other than the low bridge, it was basically the lowest volume arterial of all the ones we're monitoring in this area. So it's kind of right in the middle today. Next slide, please. Diving into the southbound volumes, what we're seeing is about 1,000 vehicles an hour are using that those southbound travel lanes. And then looking at freight on the right, we have it split up by direction. So we see that southbound freight volumes are a little bit lower. Northbound seems to carry more of the freight vehicles, with it kind of peaking in the AM and then tailoring off. I also want to point out here is that you do kind of see this, while there are peaks to show those kind of rush hour periods, compared to a lot of other corridors, it's kind of you don't normally see that plateau throughout the whole day. So what it's showing is that the volumes are really spread out throughout the day here, which is good. It's helping carry that volume better on this street. Next slide, please. So looking at some of our traffic calming, so one of the goals I think originally on West Marginal Way, especially working with the Longhouse, was we saw these high speeds and now high volumes with the bridge closed. And so we've done a few things out there. We looked at 3 different locations. We collected speed data at Dakota, Alaska, and Front Street. And we've done a few treatments out there. So we lowered our speed limit signs from 40 to 30, and then we went in later and added in radar feedback signs. What we saw is that the speed limit signs did not have very much impact. This is a little contrary to what we've seen in some of our citywide data. That shows we've seen 5 to 6% reduction in speeds, but however, due to the industrial nature of this corridor and the fact that there's very few other signals or other pedestrian generators and other types of things that you would normally see that would kind of communicate to drive at a slower speed, you just don't see those out here. However, that being said, the radar feedback signs did have a really positive impact, and we saw speeds jump from 4 to 11% depending on those 3 locations. It varied between those 3 locations, but we saw drops between all of them. Additionally, looking at Alaska Street, where we have a single southbound lane today and 2 northbound lanes, we were able to look side by side at the impacts of a single lane versus 2 lanes. And what we're seeing is also a benefit in a single lane for reduced speeds that usually correlate to a reduction in collisions and safety, or an improvement in safety. What I'll continue to point out is that even though our speed limit is at 30, our average speed in a single lane condition or a dual lane condition is still above the speed limit. So even in this single lane condition at Alaska Street, we're still seeing vehicles travel through that above the speed limit and without delay. Next slide, please. Looking at specifically at the lane drop, in 2019, we worked with the Longhouse. As we were starting to design the signal, we wanted to get some sort of benefit and safety improvement out there as soon as we could. And so we installed a lane drop approaching Alaska Street next to the Longhouse. This helped improve some sight lines out there, as well as provide some additional on-street parking directly adjacent to the Longhouse to improve that access to that space. Next slide, please. Looking specifically at the Longhouse, we have really seen a benefit to sight and visibility in that area with the lane drop today. In the old condition with 2 southbound lanes, you had very limited sight distance. You have these 2 screen lines. You have the southbound direction, or the road curves as you go to the south, right in this area. So it's kind of this little bit of it's not a blind curve, but as it kind of swings away, it's really hard to see upstream as a driver leaving Alaska Street. You have 2 screen lines. You have a line of trees that blocks your sight, as well as a chain link fence on that north property. Next slide, please. So the 2 positions we're looking at, position 1 is showing kind of the previous existing with 2 previous condition with 2 lanes that are there. How much visibility how far can you actually see an approaching vehicle southbound before you make that decision to pull out of traffic, as well as how fast is that southbound vehicle traveling? If you pull out, how much time do they have to stop? And what we're seeing is that the sight distance is about doubled when you have that with the lane drop in effect. Which, when we kind of put on our engineering hat and throw our equations out there, vehicles have to be traveling at about 27 miles an hour or less to safely stop in the condition with 2 southbound lanes. And we see that greatly improves when we have the lane drop in effect, and that it gives people a lot more time to stop safely. And so we think that this is a really big safety benefit. I dropped a quick YouTube video in the chat that you can watch later, but the Longhouse has posted some videos of their near misses out there from when there were 2 existing southbound lanes, and it's pretty scary to watch. And it really illustrates the fact that most vehicles aren't traveling at a speed where they can comfortably stop, even if a driver pulls out, just because they can't see them. Next slide, please. Looking back at our southbound data, we went out there and did some additional counts during the bridge closure to see kind of how vehicles are using that southbound lane. This is in that area where we're looking to install the protected bike lane. We saw about 80% of vehicles are already traveling single file in that area where there's 2 lanes. This is between the High Bridge and the Longhouse at Alaska Street. And so we're seeing pretty already today low utilization in that area where we want to install the protected bike lane. Next slide, please. Looking at crashes citywide, this is over the last 10 years. We're seeing, if we look at the specific area between West Marginal Place and approximately at the Longhouse, we're seeing a trend of increasing collisions over time. And specifically in 2020, citywide, we saw a drop in collisions, but in this area, we saw an increase in collisions. Next slide, please. So looking a little deeper into the types of collisions we have, we see that there's many more mid-block collisions, so collisions happening between the intersections. And then we dive into the types of collisions within that area. We're seeing that a lot of these collisions are related to high speeds. So you see rear-ending, a lot of side swipes, and then fixed objects, which is essentially running off the road collisions and hitting light poles or trees or other things like that. These are all related to high speeds. And so, one of the goals of this project is to try to continue to reduce speeds and continue to reduce collisions. Next slide, please. So let's look at some of our existing kind of capacity constraints out there. What are our restrictions today? Essentially, we have the 2 endpoints of the whole corridor, not just our project area, but beyond. We have the Chelan 5-way and we have the Highland Park Way intersection. At the Chelan 5-way, if you're heading southbound, you pass underneath the West Seattle Bridge, and you go down to a single lane. You're really constrained, and then when you get all the way down to the corridor, today, both of these intersections are already maxed out. We've done a lot of improvements in 2020. We repaved the Chelan 5-way. We've restricted turns at the Highland Parkway intersection, and we've retimed these intersections where, still at peak periods, you look at, if you stand out there, every single leg will have traffic backing up, and they're just maxed out at this point. And so at that, those are the really key indicators when you're trying to get onto the first Seattle Bridge or down to South Park or something like that. Those are the key constraints along this corridor. Next slide, please. And so looking at, again, the Chelan 5-way and then West Marginal Place, kind of where you pop out, this is essentially the key this is like the limiter for southbound movements along here. This is going to control the travel time for the corridor. And so we're, having this single lane this is one of the key pieces that impacts your travel time, as well as Highland Park Way. And so while we're looking to remove a single lane out there, this is the key piece that we can't fix. We're really limited by the West Seattle Bridge structure. There's a rail line is on the other side next to those concrete barriers, as well as that existing property is out there. And it's just not possible for us at this time to widen the roadway. We'd have to demolish the high bridge supports or move the BNSF railway or tear down that warehouse or do some sort of eminent domain thing. And none of those are options that we're considering at this time. Next slide, please. We've looked into T5 impacts as well. We've been asked this a lot. And so they released their environmental impact study. We should point out this was before the high bridge was closed. They released it in 2016 or 2017. But they projected to have about 12% of the volumes from T5 during the peak periods using West Marginal Way, and the other 88% are anticipated to use the low bridge to then get to other destinations in SODO or I-5 or other things like that. We should note that the high bridge is scheduled to open in 2022, which will be kind of right in the middle of T5. It's currently under construction today, but it'll be partially open in Q4 of 2021, and then the full capacity in 2023. So, with the full capacity open, we expect the high bridge to be, rolling at that point. So that should be kind of a natural pressure release. But in the environmental impact statement, they were only proposing about 8 to 10 trucks using that southbound direction during the peak hours. When it's in normal operations, this is before the improvements. And so again, if we were to go back to that slide that showed total volumes, we're seeing 1,000 vehicles in the peak hour. And in this case, we're only the T5 impacts before they started construction was only about 10 vehicles during that peak hour. Next slide, please. And then in that environmental impact statement, it only lists that, they're only anticipating an additional 3 trucks each peak hour in the AM and PM in that southbound direction. So again, that represents 0.3% of that 1,000 vehicles in the southbound. That being said, they have told us that with the high bridge closure, they are unsure of if things have changed or swung more towards West Marginal. But even if the trends swing, even if there's 3 times or 4 times as many, if there's a factor of 4, many trucks that are going to be using it during that peak hour. Again, compared to 1,000 vehicles an hour, we see swings day to day of about 50 to 150 vehicles, and that's just normal changes. In the peak hour, we see about swings of about 80 to 150 vehicles during that peak hour, just day to day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on the weather or conditions. And so the T5 impacts kind of can be enveloped within our analysis and kind of our capacity impacts, just almost as kind of like the day-to-day variations we see out there. And that is it, I think. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, preferred design options. Keep going. Sorry, I thought we were almost done. And so just to be transparent here, well, we definitely want to hear your feedback, and we are hearing your feedback, and we're continuing to collect that. We just also want to be transparent and kind of talk about what the data is telling us and how we're kind of seeing the impacts out there. Our preferred option is to build the protected bike lane in section 1, and then to essentially either extend that or extend parking in the section 2 area. That's because we see a lot of safety benefits with a single southbound lane. And because of these existing constraints at the Chelan 5 lane down the Highland Parkway, we're not seeing really big impacts to travel time. And today we already have a single lane. We already have a single lane at Alaska Street in the southbound direction, and we're seeing vehicles continue to travel above the speed limit, and so thus without delay. So we kind of almost have this pilot project almost in effect where a single lane today continues to operate with vehicles traveling at speed or above the speed limit and without delay. And so this is why we believe this project won't have really any big impacts or negligible impacts to travel time in the southbound direction. Next slide, please. And in addition to that, again, kind of leading off of that, we've continued to look at additional pieces of freight options. The port has asked us to look at driveway impacts out here to freight. We did that. Again, we have this single lane existing today and 2 lanes existing along the corridor. So we were able to look at our data side by side, and we looked at number of gaps in traffic. That's kind of what's used to measure how easy it is to get in and out of a driveway. And our analysis showed that essentially it's about the same between a single lane and 2 lanes, with even maybe a negligible benefit to having a single lane, just in the fact that when you have a single lane, the platoon of vehicles is a little tighter. It gets released from the Chelan 5-way that kind of releases these groups of platoon of vehicles. And you see it kind of tighten up because people are driving a little slower and they're tighter. But when you have 2 lanes, vehicles kind of accordion out and they open up and they create bigger gaps with gaps that aren't big enough for trucks to pull out into. Next slide, please. In addition to the fact that we're not really seeing these impacts of delay and we're able to maintain the existing freight mobility out there today, we are seeing a benefit to safety by reducing speeds, by reducing these sightline issues we're having at driveways in Alaska Street, as well as the benefit of improving mobility and safety for people and other modes out there. Next slide, please.
Whew, Brad.
That is it.
Take a breath. That was a lot.
So, yeah, let me, we're going to obviously alter the agenda a bit. We're well into the breakout session, so I don't think it's worth going through the transition there and back. So we're going to stay together as a group here and do a Q&A with Brad, as well as asking people to share their observations on this. So, Brad, I'm going to start with a couple of questions. If you were to do the protected bike lane, how would people make right turns into the Parks Department facility, the moving and storage company, and the other users along the east side of Marginal Way?
It would continue very much the way it is today. Today we have bikes already using they're already doing traveling in 2 directions on that sidewalk today. And so vehicles would turn right into those facilities in the same way they do today.
No, I think they wouldn't, because the right lane would be a protected bike lane.
Yes, there's still a single lane. There still would be a single southbound lane. And so on any other arterial we have on the road, any other street we have in the city that's a single lane without a dedicated turn lane, vehicles turn right into driveways, and it would function, very much like any other single lane you have on an arterial street.
And what would the effect be on the travel time on West Marginal as a result of that? Because you have hundreds of people using the Parks Department facility, and then larger trucks and freight movements into the other properties along there.
Yeah, correct. Right turns, yes, any vehicle turning right would always, there would be a minor delay to traffic, but it would be pretty minuscule from what we've seen. I'll admit we don't have direct driveway numbers out there from the Parks Department, but I'm out there every week or 2. I walk the corridor every few weeks. I spend hours out there at a time, and we do see vehicles using those driveways, but not such an excessive amount that we really anticipate any sort of impact or delay to travel time because of vehicles slowing down to make those right turns.
Yeah, I'm going to challenge you on that. I think you're underestimating the impact that would have, both on safety and on travel time at the corridor.
Yeah. Well, and we did offer, we had some COVID safe walks out there. Deb Barker and Dan Austin came along, and I'm sure they'd also be able to possibly comment on kind of some of that. But when we went out there during the peak period from 3 to 5 p.m., which is the highest volumes we see out there, and the amount of vehicles using those driveways, there are some for sure, but we weren't really seeing any type of large scale flow in and out of those driveways.
Okay, other questions, comments? I don't see any raised hands, but hold on a sec.
Yeah, we've got a list.
Okay, good. Let's work through the list.
Okay, so the first one on our list, and you made several comments, we want to give you the chance. First is John, then we've got Lindsay Wolpel, we've got Bob Waters, Ali, and Peter Goldman, and then we'll add more folks to that list. So John, you want to start?
Yeah, thank you, Angie. And again, I want to emphasize that I'm going to focus on representing the Georgetown community. I know folks have leaned on me to comment on, maritime and freight matters, but I'm going to leave that to some of the other folks here on this meeting.
Okay.
I do want to call out the fact that there has been some serious skepticism with a lot of stakeholder groups. One, with this particular design of the missing link, but also, and most importantly to me, is two, how SDOT has chosen to engage the community. And what I mean is project selection and design took place first. Then there was pushback, and then after the fact, there's been some community engagement. And I'm not convinced that there's anything that's going to be said that's really going to change this course of action. And I do want to say that, from the perspective of Georgetown, what I'm seeing is that there's going to be a severe conflict on this 300-yard stretch of roadway that's going to suck all the air out of the room for other neighborhoods who are trying to get their needs met in terms of bike connectivity to the rest of Seattle. And I'm not talking about between South Park and Georgetown, because one, that project has been in the pipeline for years, but also because I'm talking about connectivity with Soto, Georgetown, and the rest of Seattle. And it seems that it would be really advantageous for SDOT to really take a step back and look at what kind of capacity they actually have to engage. And is it really worth it to bring this project through at such a fast pace with such a fast timeline when people simply haven't had enough time to weigh in on the design or whether or not it's really going to work? I question the wisdom of that when there's a lot of unmet needs in communities where there are bicyclists, where there are people, and where there definitely is a need to access services and places of employment. So I want to put that out there as general remarks, and just sort of leave my more specific ones for another time. So appreciate the listening. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I reordered a little bit. Lindsay forego her time. So let's go Allie Thompson, and then we'll have Bob.
Sure. This is a really, I don't know, I feel like heated topic in the Valley and other places right now. I've heard things on both sides in terms of people concerned about going down to one lane there, but I've also really heard people excited about the opportunity for that to be a much safer corridor. It's a highway. I've biked there many times. I was struck by a car in the crosswalk on my bicycle there 2 years ago, and I know many others have been in accidents there. So I do support a protected bike lane in this area, especially with increased access to the Longhouse. The Longhouse itself, that's a whole nother project and a whole nother nightmare, but anything that can reduce traffic speeds and encourage people to use our trail, which is a huge asset, I do support. But I do recognize that there are a lot of voices that are upset and concerned about the going down to one lane. So I was interested to hear hear more about the results of kind of what was described as like a test pilot now with the one lane kind of maybe not having as huge of an impact as some people fear it will.
Yeah, I can talk about that briefly. I'll say that the lane drop that exists for the Longhouse, it wasn't intended to be a test pilot or a pilot project in advance of a protected bike lane. But however, it is functioning that way today, right? The concerns about travel time delay or impacts to capacity, what we see today is with a single lane condition, we see vehicles continuing to travel above the speed limit. And so in effect, without delay, whenever I've been out there during the peak periods, during the peak travel times, you continue to see vehicles travel through there at speed. In addition to that, further to the north where there are two lanes, because of the fact that there's a single lane at West Marginal Place and there's a single lane at Alaska Street where vehicles can expand out and have to merge back in, we already see the vast majority, 80% of the vehicles already using a single lane. And so that curbside lane is already being underutilized. and is more available potentially for a protected bike lane. And so that's why we're saying we're seeing almost negligible impacts. You'll hear us in other presentations we've given, and the one we'll give to the public will say 10-second delay at the absolute maximum worst time, peak periods during rush hour, if the long haul signal is triggering at the same time. And so but what we're seeing for travel times between Harbor Avenue and the First Avenue Bridge is about 11 minutes today. And so that's the number we'll use. But that's kind of what I'm trying to get at with a pilot project, in that we already see a single lane today. Vehicles are already heavily using it as a single lane today at speed. And so that's why we're not anticipating much delay or really impacts to capacity at this point.
Thanks, Brad. The list that I have now for folks who have questions or comments is Bob, Peter, and then Dan. So Bob, you want to start?
Yeah, thanks, Angie. A couple of comments. Brad, I think, well, first of all, I agree with Mayor Nichols. I think that if you're down to one lane and you got a bike lane on the right-hand side, you're going to have some real safety issues, especially if there's trucks turning. To your comment, Brad, about 80% of the traffic right now using the inside lane, I would wager that that is largely because the right-hand lane is where people are turning right, and they don't want to be slowed down or impeded by those folks that are doing that, right? So that's kind of your through lane, if you will. Now, if that's going to become a lane where you're going against, where you're making right-hand turns out of that, slowing that traffic down, and a safety issue with bikes on that, I think you're underestimating the impact there personally. I don't think you can just correlate that 80% and 20% to what's going to happen from a traffic standpoint. The last point I want to make is that we have very heavyweight corridors are a very important and limited resource in the city. And I think in taking more capacity out of overweight, heavyweight corridors is really problematic for our industrial areas. Thanks.
Sure, I can speak on those two. Again, I encourage other. I mean, you work on the corridor and everything, and I appreciate that perspective. All I can say is that all of my observations out there, the right lane is typically used for high-speed passing. All of the video we've collected, I mean, those 80-20% counts, that's me sitting out there for 4 hours with a clipboard staring at traffic, and yes, seeing some vehicles turn right into driveways, but the vast majority are just continuing to use it as a through route and pass slower vehicles on the left. So that's why we see slightly higher speeds on Dakota Street. If we saw a lot of right turning vehicles, we might actually see slower speeds in our speed data because of the fact that vehicles are slowing down to make right turns. Maybe that's a little bit too much of an assumption I'm making here. But I would just say that on any corridor and any other corridor where we have a single lane, yes, there's always going to be right turns for local access and into driveways. But what we're seeing out there through our observations is just not huge enough volumes that are going to have like a large detrimental impact to travel time out there. I thank you for your comment on heavy haul route. This is a major truck street as well as a heavy haul corridor. You are correct. To answer that, we want to look to our complete streets policy where we say that on a major truck street, trucks are the priority mode. We don't have a modal hierarchy for the city in terms of like what streets we do what on, but we do have that for freight, and that freights are the priority. But it also says that it's our duty to provide safe and comfortable accommodations for all modes. And so if we can do that while still in, what we're showing is no impact to travel times, no impact or negligible impact to freight mobility, that's why we're continuing to pursue this as an option.
And Charlie made a comment, Brad, to sort of thumbs up your observation of the right lane use, that it's the same as yours, that it's almost all high speed passing. Peter, we had you next. You want to chat?
Sure. Can I check my mic? Is it okay?
It's good enough.
Okay. Sorry about that. This might be one of these issues that everybody in the room or on the Zoom is right. And that there are going to be issues around this. And I think we're just going to have to accept this. At the end of the day, though, I support SDOT's decision here and thank them for their leadership on behalf of productive bike lanes. But let me please explain why and provide a couple of qualifications to that. Let's not minimize, this is a very, very important corridor to get out of West Seattle to the south. at grade corridor. I don't necessarily buy into the urban plan that just because bikes aren't always there, that they will not come. We need to make this corridor safer. There's a key trail there, the Duwamish Trail, which has an unfortunate sort of a missing link, so to speak, from the West Seattle Bridge down to the inception of that trail, where we're talking about here. So this is an extremely important at-grade corridor. And I think we need to measure, progress in transportation on how many more people we can shift onto bikes and e-bikes, because there's just not going to be room on the road, folks. At the same time, though, and I really do support this trail, and I use it all the time, and I know well, and I know what Allie's talking about. I support this trail. At the same time, though, it's challenging because I understand what Bob is saying. I understand what John is saying. This is a key heavy freight corridor. We're in somewhat of an emergency situation here with this bridge. This is not something that we planned, and that there are times that are uncertain right now in many different ways, particularly with the lower bridge being a little bit vulnerable, hopefully postponable after the major bridge fix. But there are certainly good points. John makes very good points about environmental justice and social justice and not enough connections around Georgetown, but we need to build those connections and this connection. I hope this doesn't become sort of a 35th Northeast Burke-Gilman Trail, everyone fighting over a few hundred feet of pavement that's going to end the world in the city of Seattle, because we want the import. Many folks, we all do support Terminal 5, including West Seattle. I see all of us are mindful of the important jobs that are taking place in the port, and we certainly don't want to scare off customers, shippers, customers, etc. But the point is, I think there is room here to do this, but I really want SDOT to assure us that it believes there is no viable way of enhancing the sidewalk alternative a little bit. And they really have to just say, folks, and I think we heard that from Brad, that it's just not viable. I love trees as much as anyone. I'd hate to see the loss of those trees. But I think that because there is an alternative there that's so close, I think we just have to be assured by SDOT that it really is not viable. And they really have to have a look inside themselves to make sure it isn't. And I secondly want to just say, is there engineering and safety precedent for putting a double bike lane where the northbound bike lane is going to be literally inches from southbound cars going 40 miles an hour? I just want to make sure that you run that up your standards flagpole and safety flagpole, because as a very experienced bicyclist, I got to tell you, if I'm a few inches away from northbound traffic going 40 miles an hour, it's something to think about. One little bubble of a cell phone could mean a disaster for a bicyclist going in the opposite direction. So yeah, I think we need to we can all have what we want here. Everybody can coexist here. I think John made a good point about process. There's a little, but I do want to thank SDOT for its leadership on protected bike lanes, because we've had disappointments in a lot of places in the city. So I just got to say, I thank them for that, but I really want everyone to know that no one wants this to be a big fight or unnecessary fight. It really doesn't have to be and shouldn't be. So that's my perspective, and thank you. Sorry for the length of it.
No worries, Peter. I'll comment a little bit on the fact that you talked about northbound traffic or northbound bicyclists being close to traffic. You are correct in that some of our preliminary designs and even our cross section we showed here kind of shows what we're calling our paint and post design, where it's just striping and the little flexible posts. We're definitely kind of diving more into the details. This project isn't fully designed, partly because we're still going through these processes, but I think we West Marginal Way has extra feet to play with in it. We have some extra room where we can add to that buffer, and we are looking to investigate to do more concrete and more substantial types of barriers out there to make it feel more comfortable, or add those extra few feet while still maintaining the 11 feet we need for freight and other mobility out there to provide an all ages and abilities and a comfortable facility. So thank you for that comment.
Dan, you've been waiting patiently. We have Dan, and then we have Jen Temple.
Yes. Okay. So a few things. I've had the privilege of being hit while riding my bicycle twice in my life. One by a Tacoma Pierce County bus that sucked me in as a child because the wind going by was able to actually pull people in. It scares the heck out of me to put a two-way post-protected bike lane on a heavy freight corridor with semi-trucks that will be hopefully going less than 30 miles an hour, but let's be honest, probably won't be. So I don't see this being safe to do it the way I saw it designed. I've also been hit in a protected bike lane on Alki. I can show you some awesome photos of road rash and a broken arm. Just because we build it safe doesn't mean we paint a stripe on the road. It doesn't make it safe. And to mix these bicycles, encourage to mix them in with freight on a heavy haul corridor, it seems like a bad place to encourage more ridership. Now, I understand ridership exists, and I believe that there is an opportunity. I know it would be terrible to lose some trees, but the trees that are currently planted are not of major significance in that sidewalk area, to turn that into more of an Alki walking bike path kind of situation that we have there. And yes, Brad, we went out and did that tour for 3 hours, and not a single bicycle was on the path the entire time we were there. I have ridden my bike in that area before. One, Deb. I feel like there is a bill that they will come, but I don't know if this is the place we should try to encourage people to come do that. And it's not an ideal place for a bike lane, but if we can turn that sidewalk into an actually protected, separated from truck traffic bike lane, that is much safer than this one way. The other concern I have is that the port traffic or the port freight data, I don't believe is up to date that you have, because there wasn't a T5 tenant as expressed by Lindsay. Brad, I talked to you about the 509 project extension finally going through, where more traffic will be going to 509. Is that going to impact the amount of freight traffic that decides to go down West Marginal to get on to 509? If you're not aware, that's going to connect all the way down to Kent with an express toll lane for truck traffic only. So I can see that bringing a major amount of traffic over, and everything previous was done on the smaller ships, not the T5 post-Panamax ships that are going to be coming in. So I feel like we're gonna take away a lane that we will never get back, and I feel it's a much wiser course to allow T5 to open the bridge, monitor how many bicycles are using it, what freight looks like with the newer ships. With 509 expansion coming, I would hate to see labor jobs go away or be pinched because of this. SSA to be pinched, the port with really well-paying jobs to be pinched from this, for the fact we might want to put a bike trail in and we might need it back in 3 or 4 years, and we're never going to give it back to them. So that's a big concern. I really, really hope we can pump the brakes a little bit, look at the actual data, we'll trust but verify what freight traffic looks like. And please, I will tell you as a 13-year-old kid who had 2 broken arms, please do not put a plastic post divider as a safety thing between us and freight. It was traumatizing as a child. And yeah, it just doesn't seem like a safe move. It's a bad place to put it. Yeah. I understand there's a missing link. Let's find the sidewalk. My last piece that I will throw in is I really think there should be a turn lane, a signaled turn lane. We're putting in the crosswalk for the Duwamish. Let's not cheap out on the Longhouse here. Let's put a signal in so when people want to take a left or a right, it actually stops those lights and allows them to take a free left or right-hand turn out of there. There's not enough events that would majorly impact traffic, and it would actually take away the visibility issue. It would create better access and safety there, and we're already going to have the lights up there. How much is a sensor? So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks, Dan.
I think we've got 1 or 2 more, Angie, but we need to start wrapping up in recognition.
I can hit those real quick in real quick succession. The tree separated thing, if your concerns are having a limited buffer, that's the issue with the tree, the option of using the sidewalk. We would have an even narrower buffer in that space, and then you would have that traffic right there. So it would be much closer and with even less room for a physical barrier separation. So that's one reason why we're choosing that option B over A in the street. In terms of 509 to Kent, that's not scheduled to open until 2028. Once the high bridge opens, we expect these volumes to drop way back down to about 10,000, 12,000 vehicles a day. Right now, we're seeing a historically high, 26,000 vehicles in the peak summer period. So there should be more than enough capacity. If we have concerns about future freight capacity more than 2 years out, as long as the high bridge doesn't close down again, we should have more than enough capacity for any sort of future freight or future capacity from that standpoint. And what Dan was also alluding to at the Longhouse, that technically our signal will be located at Herringshouse Park. That's due to BNSF, that the rail, we have to provide the crossing at an existing rail crossing. We can't create a new one at Alaska Street, which is about 150 feet to the south. We continue to look at it. Oh, ask a street is an option. Sorry.
Wrap it up, Brad.
Yep, done. Yes, sir.
Angie, did you have anyone else on your list who?
We have Jen Temple and Diane Sosney. If we can do shorter comments,
yeah,
that would be
Yeah, and I don't need mine. Mine was just a comment. I will just. I think Bob, John, and Dan covered everything I would say, and I'm just kind of confounded that we're even considering this while the High Bridge is still closed.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in. It's somewhat similar, but it's with the amount of stress we are all living under, dealing with the closure of the bridge and people having to figure out how to get to work or appointments and how much time it's going to take. It just seems to me that adding in new variables that require people to make yet another adjustment, it's a timing question. I think there are very legitimate points about how this space and way should be utilized, but I just don't think having to do all of this now, if the West Seattle, if the upper bridge is going to be open, what's the month in 22?
March, I think.
Oh, yeah. It's like,
no, I'm teasing. I think it's mid-year, June, July.
Okay. So let's get it open and then rearrange the deck chairs, but I wouldn't do it while people are already at their max capacity for change.
Good comment.
The last comment that I would make is that we've had a couple notes in the chat with John Persek shared a couple letters. And so we will make sure to send those out to everyone via email so everyone can have access to those. And also that Ali made a couple of comments about the support for this, for the bike lane with a substantial barrier. And also called attention to the equity issue about deserving bike lanes in the areas of the Duwamish Valley neighborhoods and needing to coexist with freight. Ali, I'm sorry that I paraphrased that, but I'm trying to go quick. Okay.
So we're at the end of our agenda. We had to modify, so I want to thank everyone for your patience in that. We meet again on March 10th. It'll be at the old normal time, which was noon on Wednesday. And we'll have a couple of hours then. I hope we get to look at the south part of West Marginal and what plans and issues there are there. Clearly, it's something that we need to continue to monitor and have further conversation on. But Brad, thank you for your presentation. Heather, Greg, Sarah, thank you for your presentations. Angie, thank you for joining us and keeping us in line. And we will see you all. Be safe out there. It's still snowing as far as I can tell. Drive carefully, use the transit system carefully, and we'll see you again in a month. Thanks, everybody.